From Beijing, the Communist Party of China, CPC, hosted a special high-level meeting under the name of Dialogue with World Political Parties. France, the United Kingdom and Australia see protests against governmental policies and over life cost, inflation and impayments. And in Malawi, the death toll following tropical Cyclone Freddy rose to 225. Authorities also registered 707 injured and 41 missing. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. On Wednesday in Beijing, the Communist Party of China, CPC, hosted a special high-level meeting under the name of Dialogue with World Political Parties. The dialogue between China's ruling party and other political parties from across the world took place via video link. At the event, Chinese President Xi Jinping team working together towards a community with shared future for humanity and better world of responsibilities of political parties. The CPC invited representatives of nearly 300 parties and political organizations from more than 120 countries. Nicolás Maduro's motto, President of Venezuela and head of the United Socialist Party of Venezuela, took part of the gathering and highlighted the importance of international cooperation in the building of a multipolar world.
We look at the world.
Cómo se trata de poner a prueba la energía maravillosa de los pueblos.
How they're trying to test the energy of the people that look for independence, peace, and equality and development. How they try to impose a unipolar model, not recognizing the diversity of the human civilization, not knowing our cultural power, the spiritual power of the people. That's not possible in the 21st century.
The dialogue that brought together political leaders from around the world, the Venezuelan president also stressed that imperialist power must give way to people's power in the 21st century.
Imperial times are over. The times of the people are here. I'm here to stay. Nobody can doubt that. Presidents, political leaders, nobody can doubt that there is a time of a new world that we call a multipolar world. A world of independence and integration of the people.
Daniel Ortega, president of Nicaragua and head of the Sandinista Front for National Liberation, also took part in a dialogue hosted by the Communist Party of China and addressed the main characteristics that must structure the future world.
The world we want to build must be based on peace, understanding, and solidarity, cooperation, that share the advances in science and technology to foster the good of the people.
As part of the dialogue that China's Communist Party held with world political leaders, Cyril Ramaphosa, president of South Africa and leader of the National African Congress, spoke of the mission that guides the ANC.
African National Congress is a liberation movement which follows revolutionary progress tradition. Our mission is to guide the people in solving all social and economic ailments. We also strive for the progress of human civilization. In South Africa, we negotiate the end of the apartheid and we forget a democratic consensus, a process in which we had to dialogue with our enemies. From this experience, we learned a profound lesson which continues to define our position of principles on many global issues, which is that dialogue is always preferable to violence.
In less than 4 months, Guatemala will be holding presidential elections, and progressive parties warn about a high risk of fraud. So far, 16 presidential candidates and their running mates have formalized their registration. However, the progressive organization Movimiento por la Liberación de los Pueblos, or Movement for the People's Liberation, whose candidates have been excluded from the process without legal grounds, says that both the courts and the electoral authorities are co-opted. In this way, They argue that while their candidates Thelma Cabrera and Jordan Rodas are left out, candidates who are part of the State Department's list of corrupt and anti-democratic individuals have been registered. Let's take a short break, but first remember you can follow us on TikTok at the account at teleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and much more. For the stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back from the south. Teachers, London Underground, train drivers and civil servants joined striking dockers Wednesday in a mass stoppage at Britain's finance minister, who was due to unveil his tax and spending plan. With hundreds of thousands of people due to walk out, this threatens to be the biggest single day of industrial action since the wave of unrest began last year. Other groups walking out on Wednesday are university staff across the UK and BBC journalists in England. The walkout by train staff in the ASLEF and Rail, maritime and transport unions in London left the entire underground train network at a standstill, as well as pay which workers say has not kept up with inflation. Other issues include working conditions, job security and pensions, with the government promising to extend a subsidy on energy bills for a further 3 months to alleviate household spending hit by a 10% inflation. Demonstrators in Paris leave head to the place, Italy, during the 8th day of mobilizations against the controversial pension reforms, which French President Emmanuel Macron is on the verge of pushing through despite months of protests. Opinion polls shows that around 2/3 of French people are against the legislation to raise the retirement age from 62 to 64, extend contributions for a full pension, and scrap some special privileges for public sector employees. But despite 2 months of protests and cross-sector strikes, the bill championed by President Emmanuel Macron appears on the verge of being pushed through Parliament. Demonstrations kicked off around France on Wednesday, from the northern city of Calais to the southern city of Marseille. The standoff was, however, visible in the piles of fresh blood in Paris, where municipal garbage collectors and cleaners have stopped work since early last week.
If we hadn't taken to the streets, the bill would have already been voted on. You see, it is making its way through Parliament, but we can say that it's a way. It's not a highway. It's chaotic. It requires, I understand, a lot of secret discussions between a part of the right and the government. I think it's serious that for a law which is, according to the president, the reform of his mandate, which will impact millions of people in this country, it is negotiated in the hallways and out of sight.
In Australia, a group of protesters gathered outside the Sydney Town Hall on Tuesday to demonstrate against a newly announced nuclear submarine agreement between Australia, the United Kingdom and the United States. With banners that read, "No nuclear subs, AUKUS steals from us," and "Peace for the Pacific," the anti-AUKUS coalition unfurled to denounce that the budget for 8 nuclear submarines could have been used to create 320,000 homes, 4,500 schools and 270,000 jobs. On Tuesday morning, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, US President Joe Biden and British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak jointly announced Australia's acquisition of nuclear submarines. Their deal will cost up to $245 billion by mid-2050. 8 AUKUS-class submarines will be built in Adelaide, with the first to be completed by 2042, and in the interim, Australia will acquire 3 US-made Virginia-class subs as soon as the early 2030s, while British and US submarines will begin regular port visits and a rotational presence in Australia. Fires in Argentina have devoured around 6,000 hectares of forest in the northern Corrientes province. According to local officials at the Emergency Command Center of Corrientes, 3 fires continue to be a threat, while 2 others are still burning but under control. So far, no injuries have been reported and the fires have not spread to populated areas. A report from the Agricultural Technology Institute showed that since the beginning of the year, wildfires in the South American country have destroyed more than 100,000 hectares in Corrientes. Meanwhile, experts and meteorologists agreed on the fact that while occasional heat waves are normal, climate change has made them more persistent and intense, even in the country's mountainous Patagonia region. 6 environmental groups in the United States filed lawsuits seeking to stop the ConocoPhillips Willow oil project in Alaska from going ahead after it was approved by President Joe Biden. The coalition stated that the Biden administration approved the project despite knowing the harm posed to Arctic communities, wildlife and climate, and argued that it will spew toxic emissions and greenhouse gas pollution, undermining President Biden's climate promises. The groups accused government agencies of failing to consider the impact on land use by Alaskan natives and on endangered species such as polar bears. The ConocoPhillips Willow Oil Project will be located on a portion of Alaska's North Slope, one of the last unspoiled wilderness areas in the country. Cyclone Freddy's death toll has risen to 225 in Malawi, while there are so far 707 injured and 41 reported missing. Malawi's Department of Disaster Management Affairs said in a statement that about 88,000 people have been displaced by the floods and landslides. The nation's president, Lazarus Chakwera, visited the areas affected by storm on Wednesday, where he will lead the recovery operations. The French meteorological agency Météo France warned that heavy rains will continue for the next 48 hours.
Malawi is in a state of disaster. What Cyclone Freddy has done is to pull us back even when we were trying to rebuild because of past tragedies. And I appeal to the international community to please look at us with such favor, because we need help. We need help in terms of people that have been rescued, who have lost everything, needing what is necessary: shelter, clothing, food.
teleSUR English continues to grow. You can now tune in from 33 different African countries through StarSat, dial 461, and enjoy a Latin American alternative broadcast. One final short break and we'll be right back. Don't go away. Welcome back from the South. In Pakistan, hundreds of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf Party supporters on Wednesday prevented police from taking former Prime Minister Imran Khan into custody after days of turmoil. Supporters gathered outside Khan's residence and clashed with riot police who used tear gas and water cannons. The Islamabad High Court was meeting on Wednesday to hear a fresh petition from PTI to prevent Khan's arrest, which could defuse the situation. Khan, 70 years old, has been summoned to court to answer bribery accusations, but the politician was reluctant to surrender. Khan's supporters have been pressuring the coalition government that replaced him, led by Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, with popular rallies and daily addresses. Pakistan is in the grip of a stark economic downturn, risking default if help cannot be secured from the International Monetary Fund.
I know this abduction, this is what they were going to do. This abduction had nothing to do with rule of law. It had everything against rule of law, the law of jungle, to grab me and put me in jail and keep me in jail for months, because there were so many cases, they would have just kept me in jail. And the whole idea was to miss the elections. It's not a question of me worried about going to jail or courts, because I have nothing to worry about either any of the charges. My only worry is that this whole thing is done because they want to rig the elections. They want to rig the elections firstly by getting me out of the way, then some of my senior party members out of the way.
Opponents of controversial judicial reform sought by Israel's government demonstrated on Wednesday at Ben Gurion Airport ahead of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's departure on an official trip to Germany. The Israeli parliament, or Knesset, voted on Tuesday to approve a bill in first reading that would, among other things, allow lawmakers to disregard Supreme Court rulings with a simple majority vote. Netanyahu's administration, which includes ultra-Orthodox and extreme-right parties, introduced its package to overhaul the judiciary in January. The move has sparked 10 consecutive weeks of nationwide demonstrations, with many expressing concerns that the reform package threatens the country's democracy. Thousands of sub-Saharan African students in Tunisia are claiming for protection as they remain fearful after a surge of racist attacks following comments by President Kais Saied against illegal immigration. The violence erupted after the Tunisian head of state blamed a group of asylum seekers from sub-Saharan Africa for most crime in the country, alleging there was a criminal plot to change the nation's demographic makeup. Amid what witnesses described as a hunt for blacks, Christian Gwongkam, president of the association representing sub-Saharan African students in Tunisia, AESAT, recalled that parents were worried about their children being assaulted or arrested. During this period of time, the group documented more than 20 assaults against students, including 10 with knives, and over 400 arrests. In this context, the entity is demanding the government put policies in place to guarantee the safety of sub-Saharan African students. Cuba and Australia, two countries that have had close one-run matches in past World Baseball Classics, fought to advance to the semifinals in Miami. The matchup ended up being another victory for Cuba, 4-3. Australia scored first in the top of the second when Daryl George doubled and came home on a Rickson Wingrove run battle single. Cuba tied up on a Luis Robert Jr. groundout in the third and then extended its lead in the fifth with 3 runs. After that, Alfredo the Spaniard smacked a sacrifice fly to right, and Gibbert lined a 2-run single through the right side. The Aussies refused to give up. Wingrove stepped up to the plate in the top of the 6th and blasted one out to right center field for a 2-run shot that would pull Australia back to within a run. But that was all Australia could muster against Raidel Martinez, who pitches for the Chunichi Dragons in Nippon Professional Baseball and closed out the win. We have come to the end of this news briefing. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For Telesur English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.